What's up, good people? Welcome back to the channel. I guess since I'm officially a YouTuber now, I should ask you to like, comment, and subscribe if you're enjoying the content that I am putting out. I posted a poll asking what kind of content would you guys want to see. I put a few options out there. The most popular response was a podcast with another high-ticket dropshipper, and this is going to come in due time. I'm still trying to figure out good timing for it. The second most popular answer was kind of like the expectations versus reality of high-ticket dropshipping. So without beating around the bush, I'm going to get right into the topic. And I kind of broke this out into 4 points, although there's certainly a lot that I have learned over the last several years that have completely altered my perspective on the reality of e-commerce. And this is a conversation that could last several hours. But for today, I kind of broke it out into the 4 main points that come to mind as far as what I have experienced from actually running an e-commerce business versus my expectations when I first went into it. Before getting into these 4 points, I would like to say that I think the overarching reality of e-commerce is that it requires more work than people give it credit for. And the overarching reality is that it is very possible to make a lot of money with e-commerce. But unfortunately, as time goes on, it becomes harder and harder, and it becomes more saturated and more saturated. So if you're someone that is willing to put in the work, is patient, doesn't need success tomorrow, there are a lot of routes that you can go building a business online with not very much money up front at all. And high-ticket dropshipping is one of those things, and it's something that it's going to test your patience like anything worth doing in life. So without further ado, I'm going to get into the first one. The challenge of getting suppliers up front when you have no business history, you have no revenue to show, and just kind of my expectations reaching out to suppliers versus what I encountered. For me, I came from the world of software sales, cold calling people, hopping on calls with customers. For those of you that are in sales or come from sales, you can relate to this a lot, to where you are very used to being rejected. And I'm the same way on the phone. If I get an unsolicited sales call from somebody, my guard immediately goes up. And that's just the nature of human beings. So I reached out to, with my first product niches that I got into, I probably reached out to around 120 to 150, somewhere in there, suppliers. And I had 8 up front tell me yes. Pretty much everyone else said no, or didn't respond at all. And if you kind of go in with this expectation, you're gonna have a much easier time, because if you go in expecting all suppliers to say yes to you, obviously you're going to be pretty disappointed with what you encounter. Some suppliers want to see more of a revenue base from you. Some suppliers want to see that you have a business history. Some suppliers don't work with drop shippers at all. There are a lot of different cases, but the reality is, over time, once you get your first suppliers and you have that initial base and you can start advertising products, selling products, and actually have some business history and some revenue to back you up, you're gonna have a lot more leverage when you approach those initial suppliers that said no on the front end, months later, years later, and say, hey, I'm doing X amount of revenue, I'm working with 6 of your competitors. I really think that your products would fit well in this business. That pretty much covers what I wanted to chat about as far as getting suppliers goes. It's something that is not comfortable, it's not easy, but it's certainly not impossible. And it's kind of one of the first big hurdles that you have to get over if you want to choose this type of business model. The next thing that really was hard to get past for me was the expectation of immediate profitable sales, of getting sales, the day after I start running ads. When I first got into this, I had a good framework to follow, but looking back at it, there were many mistakes that I made. The night that I set up my Google Ads account, set up my campaigns, and pressed go, I went to bed that night, just desperately hoping that I woke up in the morning and just saw 6 Shopify order notifications waiting on my phone. There were 0. And there were a lot of reasons for this. And actually, I went the first several weeks without getting a single sale. I've kind of discussed this in another video of mine, I believe. There were several problems with what I was doing. For one thing, I had too many product types on my website. I just looked like this massive outdoor niche website that didn't really specialize in any type of product type. So whether I was advertising greenhouses or fire pits, I didn't really come off as an authority in either of those spaces. The second problem was that my product pages were not organized well. If I was a customer looking to buy a greenhouse, I would have had a really hard time looking through my store and figuring out what information I need to know, or if I was looking for specific information, I would have to read through these long paragraphed product descriptions that I just copy and pasted from my suppliers. So that was another big thing, was just the user experience on my website itself. And aside from that, my branding and coloring, as trivial as this sounds, it didn't look very good. My colors were ugly. There wasn't any distinct branding to it. And what really changed for me was when I had one of my friends that was also in high ticket drop shipping. I pretty much reached out to her one day and I said, look, I need you to look at this website. I need you to be absolutely ruthless and tell me everything that is wrong with it. I want you to insult the crap out of this website. And she did just that. She sent me back a novel of the problems, some of them I just listed to you. And where I went from there, that was the most game-changing thing that I did. Was I got unbiased, ruthless feedback from a friend of mine that was also doing high-ticket dropshipping and was being really, really successful with it. And so I took advice from her, all of it. I changed the name of my website. I narrowed it down to just a single product type, and I went from having like $10,000 of sales in the month of July to about 65,000 in the month of August. This was a couple years ago now, but I still look back at that turning point, and had I not gotten that ruthless advice from my friend, I either would have quit doing drop shipping or e-commerce entirely because it was losing me money. It was not making me anything back, or I would still be trucking along with a subpar website and not making nearly as much money as I could be. And I also probably would not have been able to quit my job. So this is all to say, I approached this with the expectation to have sales right off the bat, which some people do. And some people do because they do a lot of things right on the front end. And there were a lot of things that I did not do right, or I didn't do in the most optimal way on the front end, several of which I just listed out for you. So if you're someone that has a lot of patience, has a lot of willingness to get past challenges and problems, and kind of give yourself the mentality that failure is not an option with this, at some point you're going to succeed. This kind of plays into my third section of this. The expectation with e-commerce a lot of the time is that it's, once you figure it out, it's just constant smooth sailing. And that is most certainly not the case. So from a sales perspective, to this day, I've had months that generate $300,000 in sales, but I will still have days, even up to a week from time to time, where no one buys a single thing. And that's obviously a really uncomfy feeling. And in those situations, I have to kind of go back to the drawing board and be like, okay, what is the problem that I'm running into here? Am I not advertising to the correct people? If that's the case, I can go into my Google ads and really filter down a lot of my negative keywords to make sure I'm showing up for the proper keywords that people type in. If it's a problem on my website, I will go to this app that I use on Shopify. It's called Lucky Orange. Lucky Orange literally allows you to watch screen recordings of all people that land on your website, how they interact with it. And so I have spent hours upon hours upon hours watching that because it's the most useful data you can get. Actual raw user experience interaction data that you can watch before your very eyes. So if you can tell that a customer is looking for a specific product, that they're typing it in the search bar, or you can tell that they're searching for a specific thing, but they're maybe having trouble navigating your menus, or maybe there's something on your product page that isn't laid out very well that makes it confusing, or maybe you have contradicting information on your product page. You know, that's something that you should always pay attention to as well. You know, going several days without people buying, it could be a number of things. It could just be luck of the draw. It can also be something that you can very easily solve. Or fix. So from a sales perspective, high ticket dropshipping is not always smooth sailing. It's going to be ebbs and flows, as it is with any business, as it is with any sales job that you'll ever have, because ultimately you are relying on consumers to give you their business. And so there are going to be days, I've had days where I've had $30,000 in sales, and I've had plenty of days where I have $0 in sales. And that's just the nature of the beast. This kind of leads into my final point here of the idea of passive income. Passive income doesn't actually exist. Ultimately, any income source is going to require some level of attention or work at some point. And running your own high ticket dropshipping business is most certainly not an exception to this. You are the only employee. You are the one that answers customer questions via chat, via phone, via email. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of things that you can automate and a lot of things that you can optimize on your website to make things as passive as possible. But if you approach this business with the expectation that you are going to be hands-off entirely, it's just not going to lead to a very successful business. That said, there are plenty of sales. I would say probably 70% of my revenue is just from my online store, and I never interact with the customer. My website is laid out in a very clear, concise manner in which the customer can have a very easy buying experience without having to call my business number and actually speak with me. But that said, there are customers that are going to call, there are customers that are going to email, and you should use that as an opportunity to build rapport with your customers, build trust with your customers, and actually use what product knowledge you have to offer value to them, so they not only return to you or buy from you in the first place, but they will then recommend you to other customers just by word of mouth. And I would say that this has become at least 10% of my business, is literally customers that are either returning or coming based off of referrals from other happy customers. Now, it is possible to hire employees over time, and at some point I am going to do this to handle either existing customer requests, warranty issues, stuff like that I don't want to fill my time up with. But I've actually really come to enjoy when a new customer calls asking for product recommendations or more information on a product, because I've gotten to a point where I know my products well enough to where my close rate over the phone is probably well in the 85 to 90% range. So I see it as a wonderful opportunity every time that phone rings, that I get to not only make a sale, but build rapport with a customer that will either come back in the future or recommend me to somebody else. So that kind of wraps up what I wanted to cover, at least in this video. I hope this is helpful. Again, my goal with this channel is to be as transparent and objective about high ticket dropshipping as possible, because I do think I know it has the potential to change people's lives. It has changed mine from a financial perspective, but it doesn't come without its own challenges. So that's it for this one. And as always, leave a comment if you either liked the video or want to see a specific type of content, you want to see me talk about a specific topic. And make sure, if you haven't, subscribe to the channel, because I'm hoping, at least after the holidays, to post a lot more content on here. So until next time.